Okay, I think we're working. Had a bit of a hairy one there because OBS decided to stop working all of a sudden, which is fun. Anyways, it's live now. Okay. So last week we worked on the hold button element. We're going to pause work for that now, possibly stop that entirely, but that was a button, and you hold it down for a period of time, and it would only click when you held it down, like after enough time. It was good fun. It lasted 2 sessions, but we've got 24 components to build, and only 10 more days to build them in, and I think there's something like 12 left to do. Let's have a look, shall we? We've built 11. Okay. So with that said, let's see what the web component roulette wheel gives us today. Sparkline. Okay, cool. So this is like one of those. I think we even have them in like a GitHub. Maybe I should steal one of these, but a sparkline, is this going to give me a sparkline anywhere in here? I don't know. Let me Google for it, or DuckDuckGo, I guess. Sparkline graph. Yeah, it's this kind of thing. So like it's a time series single. It's like not a bar graph. It's kind of like a time series graph. I think one thing that makes sparklines very useful is when they kind of have this gradient, which I think this one does. But like the lower they go, the darker they go, or something. So let's try that. So we're gonna clone the custom element boilerplate. Oh, it's gonna make me single sign on. One moment, please. Okay, not doing that on there. One moment. Let's go here into my main browser. And this is going to be called Sparkline Element. Okay, cool. So if I go back to 24 web components, we should have Sparkline element. And so I'm going to clone that. Sparkline element. Nope, that's not how you spell Sparkline element. And so we kind of know the routine by now, but I'm going to move this source file. It's going to be called Sparkline. We're going to edit the Sparkline element. I need to do an npm install. This is going to install all of the dependencies that we're used to using. So ESLint, TypeScript. This is Sparkline. Nope, not that one. That one. Let's go Sparkline npm start in a different window. Okay, cool. So the element's not working, and that's because this custom element tag. This needs to change to Sparkline as well. And then we want to go into our examples, index HTML, do the same thing, and then this is going to be Sparkline element. And there we got a wave back. Zoom in a bit. Cool. Okay, so I think a Sparkline element. I kind of feel like we should do a couple of elements here, because I think we don't just want a sparkline, like what we want to do is we want to represent data. We want to represent some time series data. So we're probably going to end up with either a JSON or a like a JSON object or a JSON array. You could do like a tuple where you could have like the date. So it happens to be 12/12 right now. 17:06 UTC, and then a number, so 5. And then we're going to go down here, and like with each one of these, it should be in the sequential time series order. So this should be like the next one at like 50 seconds, and maybe this one is at like 7 minutes. And then they're going to change. So this one's going to be 8, and this one's going to be 2, and so on and so forth. So we could get like a bunch of JSON. We could just say like source equals, you know, path to JSON, and we could parse that. I think that's okay. It's kind of not that interesting. One thing that kind of bugs me about that as well is that like we have a data exchange format here, which is HTML. And so do we really need to go fetching JSON files? I think what could be more interesting is if each of these was an element itself. And so if each of these, hey DNTNT, so if each of these was like a sparkline point with a date time, I think that could be a bit more interesting, right? And so now if we had each of these value, whoops, oh no, I can't type today as usual. Nope, that's not how you do that. Right, select, change, quote. Yeah, so then this is going to be a spark line point. So we can use this now to build some data. So if we have a look at our HTML, we need to get rid of this bit which overrides the text content. So we've got these sparkline points, which I think is really useful because we can add more stuff here later. So I'm thinking about like constructing a graph where maybe you would have like an x-axis, but x-axis and a y-axis, but maybe you want to omit those for some graphs, or like you want to have tooltips, you want to have some kind of interactivity, so you want to know where these are pointed, like where these points are in the page. And so we can kind of attribute a physical, I mean, you know, it's bits and bytes, so it's never physical, but like a sort of slightly more tangible point on the page because we actually have an element here on the page that we can reference. And so I think what I'm going to do is make a render route. So this is going to be a shadow route, and we're going to say this dot render route, this dot attach shadow mode open, and I'm going to make some HTML in here. So inner HTML. We're going to do the usual trick, const HTML string.raw. This gives us like some semblance of syntax highlighting in this HTML string. We're going to have a slot. And I'm going to name this slot points. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to say slot assignment is manual. Just to make things a little bit more interesting, eh? So what we're going to find is if I get rid of this, this slot name points, it doesn't actually have any points in it. These are not reflected. These have just been swallowed up. They're not part of the shadow DOM now, or they're not like reflected in the shadow DOM. If I give these a name, points, if I can type again, then they are. Nope, that's slot points. Then they will be reflected, and so we can see here these are now all reflected. They're not actually visible. What I might do just to just to make it a little bit easier to see what is going on, I'm going to give the spark line point a 1 pixel red border. So border 1 pixel solid red. There we go. We can see these now. Let's chuck in a margin 5 pixels on them, or 4 pixels, whatever. So these are each of our sparkline points, just so you can see what they are actually doing. Sorry. In the throes of a chest infection right now, so. Excuse me. One moment. Okay. Excuse me. So, if I change this to slot assignment manual, what happens is none of these are assigned. But that's useful because now what we can do, if we had other content in here, let's say I had a P tag, hello world. If I give this a slot of points, and I switch this back off, you can see this has now been reflected, and this isn't something that we necessarily want to do. I don't want to see the P tag reflected in these points. The points should only have my sparkline point element. That's the only one I want in there. So I think, yeah, we're gonna do this. None of these now get reflected. What I might do is just do something like a caption. I know caption's the wrong tag here, but just have an unnamed slot, and then everything that doesn't get attached can just go in here as like a general purpose slot, but we can still use manual slot assignment to do that. My word. Don't do a stream when you've got like a cold is the takeaway from this. Okay, so we got a spark line, we got a slot with points. We need to do some manual assignment. The way these slots work is you just need to query them, and then you can call assign on them. So if I said query, I need to say render root, query selector, slot name points, and what I might do is get this into a getter, so points slot, and let's do this. So now if I said this points slot, if I tell TypeScript that this is an HTML slot element, which I need to do here, I think this should be inferred. Excuse me. Then there's a assign function that is specific to the HTML slot element. Let's go and have a look. That's lovely. Right, so this is the property, not the. This is the slot element, and the documentation is really weird on MDN, so we actually want to look at the interface. Okay, so this is the HTML slot element interface. So it has a name, it has this assign method, and with this assign method, what you can do is you have the slot, you can just pass in an arbitrary list of nodes, and this will only work when slot assignment is manual. And it will do the equivalent of what the automatic slot assignment does, where it will just put the nodes in a reflected way. So if we said this.query selector all slot spark line point, then what we should see is each of these spark line points has been reflected into this points slot. And then if I remove the slot attribute here, this is still true, because instead of using the slot name, excuse me, sorry about this. Excuse me, sorry. Rather than using the slot name, we're using the tag name, and then we can define this as another element. So I can say spark line point element extends HTML element, and do the same boilerplate here. So if the sparkline point element hasn't been defined, then we're gonna say the sparkline, that's not the right one, sparkline point element is going to equal that on the window, and it's going to be this here. Thank you very much, DNTNT. I hope I feel well soon as well. It's kind of a mistake on my part to do a stream in December when, without fail, every December I manage to get a chest infection. Anyway, so this should now be a custom element. In Chrome it's really disappointing. In Firefox, every custom element has a custom element badge. In Chrome, the only way that I know that you can find out if it is a custom element is to select the element and type in $0.constructor in the console, and then you get the class name, the class that you're after. I really hope the Chrome DevTools, maybe Jack, if you're watching, if you could add a custom element badge that shows whether or not an element is a custom element or has a custom element definition, that would be really cool. Am I going to file a bug? Probably not. There probably is a bug already. We should all go and star that. Let's find if there's a bug. DevTools custom element badge. I can't see anything. I'm going to file one like, oh, maybe there is. I'm not going to look here, but I am going to file one later if there isn't, and I'll toot it out. That's the word that we're using, isn't it? I'll post it on Mastodon. We can all star it. Okay, so we've got our sparkline points in here. What's really cool about this is that we can now figure out where these are going to be. And I think, to be honest, let's kind of do the thing we did yesterday. So we want to say sparkline styles is going to be a new CSS style sheet. I said yesterday, I meant on Friday's stream, we did these constructible style sheets, and so you can do this. I'm going to also add this as well. So we can add some CSS here. Okay, don't know why that's all the way over there. And then this style sheet, we can say in the render root, the adopted style sheets that the render root has should include this sparkline styles. And so rather than inlining a style tag in here, like rather than doing style here, which is kind of horrible, we're actually creating an object that we can reuse for as many sparkline elements as we want. And then in here we can say, you know, display block border 1 pixel solid black. And all of a sudden we're writing CSS in our JavaScript that's not inside a style tag, inside of an HTML string, inside of a connected callback. It's like up here out the way. Okay. What I want to do is I want to make the host element position relative. Maybe it's a bad idea to style the host with these things because it is oh my god, I'm losing my voice. It is a bad idea to style the host because that can be overridden with CSS So if you look at the host element, you can see it inherits styles from this host selector. But then if I were to say position absolute, all of a sudden this is overridden. However, if I just stuck a div in here, whoops, div, and I made that position relative, this no longer has this host style. There's no way for me to override this div. I cannot override the styles of this div unless the author of this custom element, in which case it's me, gives me the facility to do so. And the way I would do that, I think, is with the part attribute. Oh, Nojo, thank you very much. Shadow DOM style. Whoops. I mean, let's have a look at this. Shadow DOM.style. For elements exposed to the shadow DOM and elements exposed to the shadow. For elements exposed to the shadow DOM and elements exposed to the shadow DOM. I think that the language needs to be improved a little bit here, because if you don't read the parentheses, this doesn't make sense. Host and slotted elements in the shadow DOM. And elements and part elements in the shadow DOM. Yeah, this is exactly right. So my God, this is the tickliest throat. So this is what I was getting to. Is this looks awesome. Thanks so much for doing this, Nojo. The div that I have here cannot be styled unless I provide it a part. And so if I say part container, now all of a sudden in this element, I can make a new class. I can say part container, and now I can say display absolute. If I can actually write this down. Why is that not working? You can see it's reflected here, but for some reason it is not working. Invalid. It's not display absolute, that's why. It's position at. Have I mentioned I'm bad at CSS? So yeah, this is how you can provide areas at which you can inject CSS into parts of your shadow root, but it also allows you to it allows you to create areas of your shadow root which can never be styled, and it also allows you to create areas of your shadow root which can be styled. And it's very similar to the kind of stuff that you can get in like input elements. Like an input type number has the up and down rocker button is like a pseudo selector. And it uses a similar, it doesn't use the part syntax, but it uses a kind of similar thing where it's like you have this pseudo selector. If you can imagine these as like the before and after elements for each one. I think I'm going to go pause this and I'm going to go grab some medicine. 1 second. apologies. I figured I'd go get some proper medicine, and a couple of minutes of awkward silence on the stream was better than me watching me slowly die. Okay, where were we? Thank you, TNT. Right, yeah. Relational selectors just don't work with parts, which is both nice and not nice. What do you mean by relational selectors, Nojo? Like, stuff like tilde and plus? Okay. So, we actually don't want a part here. The whole point of this was to fix this position relative styling here. This, I think, is going to let us, with this value, we should be able to turn that into a property. I think this is going to work. So, I'm not sure how we'll do this, but we will figure this out. So I think what we want to do, we want to figure out our bounds, which is the height of this element. Just to make this really easy for us, let's make this height 100 pixels, just for now. And then in our spark line, I think I want to say observed attributes is going to equal value. And then when the attribute is changed, attribute changed callback. Whoops. We're also going to say point styles equals new CSS style sheet, and we're going to say this dot point styles point styles replace. So this is a name. It's only ever going to be a value. So it's relational selectors. So Nojo, you're saying like part something greater than. So the thing is with shadow root styling inside the shadow root, you really don't get much autonomy about deeply nested styles. So the same is true for slots. This manual slot assignment, you can only assign nodes. Maybe I can do this with an actual demo. But you can only assign nodes that are the direct descendants of the element that has the shadow root. So for example, if I had a div, and inside the div I had a p, if I were to say, let's try and just stick it in the point slot. If I were to say query selector p, we're going to get an error in the console, which we didn't. That's weird. Why did we not get an error in the console? You can see the custom element definition has failed, but we should have an error. And I do not know why we don't have an error. At any rate, if you try to assign a slot, like if I do this manually, oh no, we've just got something that's failed. Oh, it's here. Okay, right, cool. So if I try and do a query selector for a P, that's interesting. It hasn't reflected it. And so if I go here, if I go to the console, let's get rid of this and get the console up. You can see I'm on the slot element, and let's call this slot for now. Save it as slot. If I'm on the spark line and I do a $0, which is my spark line, query selector P, this is the P tag, this hello world. If I say slot.assign, it doesn't do anything. I think it should error. I'm not sure why it's not erroring, but it doesn't do anything. It's not assigning the slot. You can see that if I do sparkline point, it assigns the first sparkline point. And so the reason that this is happening is because you can only assign nodes that are direct descendants. So this div is in the way. I can assign the div, like I can change this to a div. Oh, that is interesting. Oh, did this come back as none? Because I'm already on the div, so this is why you don't use $0 and why you save stuff as temporary variables. If I do this, you can see I've assigned this slot. So you are able to assign this div, because this div is a direct descendant of this sparkline, but the P is not, and so it will not let you assign it. In fact, if I try and do it now, what's going to happen... Let's try that again. If I do it now, what's going to happen is it's going to clear it out, because it goes through the list of slots and it says there is... it goes through the list of elements and it says these elements are not direct descendants of this sparkline, so just ignore them. And what you're left with is assigning nothing, which is the equivalent of clearing this out. So you do need to... There's limitations around Shadow DOM and direct descendants. Yeah, so the whole thing of... You can use direct descendants, you cannot use subtree elements, and I think the same kind of concept applies to the styles, and so I don't think you can use relational selectors in that regard, where you're like trying to style deeply nested parts. I'm just knocking back the cough medicine now. Okay, so where were we? So we want to... We've got an attribute, it's a value. We know this value here. What we don't have is... We can't use this in CSS because there's no way to get an attribute in CSS. There will be soon. Soon you'll be able to do something like height attribute value. Right now this is not going to work, and so what we need to do is we need to somehow extract that, and so we can just say point value is going to be this is where I was, new value is going to be new value pix, and this is a string or null. Whoops. And we'll just ensure that it's 0. Okay, I've got a load of red lines. I don't know why. What is going on here? Oh, only one custom element must be specified per file. There's a lint rule. So let's disable that. Disable next line. Custom elements 1 element per file. That worked. Sparkline point element. File. Oh, God's sake. This is another lint rule, which is custom elements. This does make sense. We probably do want to do 1 element per file. However, I don't really want to waste any more time than necessary, so I'm just going to disable these rules for now. File name matches element. Okay, cool. Got rid of the squigglies. This wants to be indented. Okay, so now we have this mapping. So what we have is this element. Whenever the point style changes, we should see... whenever the point value changes, sorry, the point style should change. So we should see... oh God, how do I resize this to actually get the CSS? Right, there we go. This should have... Oh, it also helps to attach the styles to the shadow root. So we need to do this again. We need to do this in a connected callback. We also need to get this render root, which we also need to assign, which we are. Okay, cool. So each of these now has shadow root. If we look at the element styles, this shouldn't be sparkline styles, this should be point styles. Okay, so we have, we should have this point value, and it doesn't seem to be reflected in the dev tools. I think we ran into this problem the other day. I think if I just make a div for now, let's make another one of these. This is going to be sparkline point styles. And I'm going to add this here. CSS inheritance still works, so anything that a child inherits, a part can influence. That's very correct, Nojo, yeah. And yeah, CSS inheritance will work on parts. There's also some trickiness there because anything that you specify within your shadow DOM can be overridden by light DOM styles if you're allowing it to happen. So if you have something specified in your part, I mean, we saw that here, right? With these host styles, this is specified in the shadow DOM. It's almost like a user agent style sheet at that point where it's like it has the lowest specificity. So I think even if this had a higher degree of specificity of selector, style sheets would still override it. There's no way, I don't think, to like provide more specific selector within a shadow root style that wouldn't override the light DOM styles. Light DOM styles always override. Okay, so important might work, says Nojo, which we would all be able to see if the chat didn't crash, which I think it has. Let's refresh that. I don't think important works either. It might be something worth popping on this on this style sheet precedence page, because I have a feeling, having looked at this before, I think important doesn't even work. Okay, where are we? Apart from me dying. Sorry, excuse me. So the sparkline point styles, we want to override these. I just want to do a div here with border 1 pixel solid red, and I'm going to get rid of the styles here. This needs to be sparkline point styles. Excuse me. Sorry. Okay. Something's going wrong here. This needs to be display inline block as well, I think. Okay. Right, we have points. We have individual points. Let's give them a margin. Right, these are the individual points we have. This is we're finally making progress on this. 40 minutes into the stream. This has been a particularly disastrous stream, I feel like, but we will plow on. So these are not really in any relative space, and I think what we want to do is we want to make them go up and down dependent on the space that they're in, dependent on the value that they have as well. So I feel like we want to say margin top, maybe something like 100 pixels minus the var point value. And this should this should work. Let's have a look at the div. So the point value is not defined. This needs to be replaced sync. Oh, this needs to be root in here. That is part of the problem. This is not, this needs a CSS block, and I gave it not a CSS block. It might help if I actually try and syntax highlight. Maybe this needs to be host as well. There we go. That's more like it. Now we're getting there. So now we can see the style reflected after all that time. So we've got this point value that's being set. This could be on the div. Excuse me. So if we look at the div, we've got the point value of 5 pixels. And so we're saying 100 pixels minus 5 pixels. This should resolve to a margin top. If we look at the computed styles of 95 pixels, which seems to be not working for reasons that I don't know, because I'm bad at CSS, and we've done another CSS. We've done another CSS heavy component. Line 51 has the old variable name, which I'm guessing line 51 doesn't exist anymore. I'm guessing you were referring to this note, Joe. Well, sorry, Lowerfi. This now has the new one, so hopefully we're... Oh, are we just frozen? This is going well. Are we... Is the whole video frozen? Is the chat not frozen? Oh man, this is a disaster. As the chat... the audio is presumably still... My cam is frozen, the chat's still working. Oh, okay. So you can still see my cursor. And yeah, the audio is fine, but you can still see my cursor. It's just the camera. That makes sense. Let's refresh the camera, I guess. Don't know why that's going on. Okay, we can just get rid of the camera. I don't need a camera. I think that's probably better, more palatable than my static face. Let's try again. See, nope, it's definitely frozen. Oh my god, this is working out nicely, this stream. Okay, well at least you don't have to watch me coughing or splattering, even if you still have to hear it. Okay, why is the CSS not working? Let's have a look. So we've got the point value. If we look at this one, this was 2 pixels. If we go to the div, we can see this has a margin top of 98 pixels. Maybe let's make these values a bit more outrageous, like 50, 80, and 20. That's really weird. Loverfi has made a quick test. Doing a much better job than I am. Then, yeah, this is great. This is what we wanted. Margin bottom would have been a very sensible choice here. Rather than doing some kind of wonky calculation, we can just add a margin bottom. And things looked like they were working a bit more. They don't. These points look a bit... I mean, actually, one of the reasons I set position relative up here was that these could be position absolute. I don't know why I didn't do that. But if these were absolute positioned, then all we need is a bottom here. And then we can do a left, which I also wanted to calculate based on the date time. So when I was thinking about, when we were sketching this out, I was thinking, if this whole thing is position relative, each of these can be position absolute. the datetime can serve, we can calculate this as a left value, and we can calculate this as a bottom value. Completely forgot about all of that, so that's great. But yeah, like if this is 100 pixels, obviously that's not great, but like we can see this is going, moving along the x-axis. And so all we need to do now, in the remaining 15 minutes of this stream, is figure out the, what I might call the left value. And so if I did left here, left value, obviously that is not accurate because this is using the value. And so what we will need to do is we'll need a value getter, and this is going to return this .get attribute value, and we're going to normalize this to a number. Whoops. And then we're going to also return we're going to have a date property, or date time, and this is going to get the date time, and this is going to normalize it to a date. So this needs to return a date. And of course, what it's telling me is that the get attribute will return null, which is not a valid argument for the date constructor. So I need to give it, I'm just going to give it 0 as an empty date. So now we can kind of derive, so what we also want to do is observe, no, that's a union type. We want to observe the datetime attribute now as well, which means that this can also be datetime. And here, go away. Here we have this replace sync. We can't just do this now. We can't just get the new value. We need to, oh my god, these diagnostics. We need to replace this with something. So we can replace this with the date time, and this one with the value. That's not going to work so well because it turns out date time produces very large numbers. So we want to normalize that down. And so I think what we want to do, what I'd like to do is, for this sparkline element, I think what I want to do is say, have something like a start time. And what this can do is query selector all of its sparkline points. Why am I doing that? I do want a for loop actually. So for const point of sparkline points, we're going to get the lowest date. So we're going to say if point date time is less than the lowest or infinity. I guess, why don't we make this infinity? Then the lowest is going to equal point date time, and then we can return the lowest. So it's going to be date. This is not going to like this because I've used infinity here, so I need to just cast this as a date. So we should have the start time. I will also want to do the same. I want to do end time as well. Oh my god, end time. And this is going to be negative infinity, and this is really irritating. This squiggly here. This is a TypeScript problem. If we go into our tsconfig, the libraries that we have chosen are the ES2018 library and the DOM library, and it's telling us that node list of element must have a symbol iterator. It does have a symbol iterator. Query selector all, a node list, is iterable. The problem is, for some reason, TypeScript separates all of the iterables into dom.iterable, I think for backwards compatibility reasons. And so now you can see I've added this library, it's recomputed, and now it knows that node list element is an iterable because it's added those extensions. I have no idea why we need to add this in, and I also don't know why it isn't on this particular boilerplate by default. I think we should get it added to the boilerplate. These are sparkline points, and that's why we're getting this squiggly, and so that should fix that error. This should be a date, I guess, or infinity. Type of infinity, isn't that just number? That's just number. Maybe we should return a new date here. Okay, so the end time is going to be negative infinity. We're going to change this to greater than. This should be highest. We've got the same problem here, which is that this is a sparkline point element, and this should be highest too. And we'll probably just do this. Okay, so we should have, if we look at this element, we should have $0.end_time is an invalid date. Fantastic. That is what we wanted. If the point date time is greater than the highest, which is negative infinity, the highest gets reassigned. This is date or number. I guess let's break out the debugger. Let's go to sources. I forget what it is. It's called debugger in Firefox. I don't know why it's called sources in Chrome. We're going to pull up this element. Whoops. $0 dot constructor. I don't know how to use Chrome DevTools effectively, so I'm just show function definition. Why would this not resize? Go down. Do I need to get rid of this? There we go. I'm going to add a breakpoint here. I guess I need to resize this a bit. So let's call... Oh, I actually want to add a break time on the end. Let's call... not constructor, end time. Okay, so we start with negative infinity. We're going to get rid of this go away tooltip. Right, we've got query selector all, sparkline point. And so we should be able to, if I hover, if I select this, and then hover over it, it should evaluate. So we have a length of 1. Isn't that weird? Why is this a length of 1? Get rid of the type. This is a node list of 3. I don't know why this is a length of 1. Anyway, so we're going to step over. So we've got a point. Point is undefined. Okay, point is sparkline point, and it's the first one. The date time, aha! So the date time is an invalid date on this. If I typed in, this is this is not a valid ISO 8601 date. That's the problem. There's no such time. ISO 8601 dates can only have a time offset. They cannot have a time zone. So they have to have a time offset. So plus 0000, that's a valid time offset. They also have a shorthand, which is Z. UTC is not a shorthand for an ISO 8601 date. So this is a valid ISO 8601 date time, which is something that date will be able to parse. So if I refresh now, and I call this, wrong one, we call end time. Okay, great. I already saw in the hint here, we have a full date. So let's get rid of the breakpoint. Oh wow, this is really cramped at this resolution. Okay, so we've got an end time, which is 5:07, and that is the longest time. But if I move this up here, and I look at the end time, I still get 5:07. A way to do this, by the way, with this, what I'm doing here, you could change this to call into math.max. I think it would be worse. I think it would actually look worse. And I'm going to demonstrate it quickly. So instead of this whole thing, I see a lot of people kind of reach for this. This is just my opinion. I'm not advocating for one style over another. I guess I am advocating for one style, but yeah, we can do array from, or we can use an array spread. We can do a query selector, sparkline, sparkline point. Map that, get the date time, and then we can pass that into mathmax. And then we need a new date. And so a lot of developers I've worked with certainly will look at this and be like, this is a better line of code. In my opinion, this is more difficult to reason about. And so you might look at this, especially with the for loop, and be like, this looks like a very old school piece of code. But what I like about this, I like a couple of things about this. One, which we've already demonstrated, is if you get this wrong, it is very easy to step through this code. It's quite difficult to step through this code because there are no iterations that are exposed in the debugger. And so if we take this, I need to comment that out as well, and we go into the sources pane, we can put a breakpoint on line 40. It's not even letting me put a breakpoint on line 40. This is genuinely broken, not actually. Oh, wait, what? Okay, there. So Chrome is quite sophisticated in that it allows you to put breakpoints at expression members. So you can put a breakpoint at the map. You can put a breakpoint in here. This gets you some of the way, but you're still going to, if we call this, this was start time. It's still going to be quite a pain to debug. So I guess, well, I don't even know. Oh, so we're on this breakpoint. So I guess I need to step over that one, and we should be in here. We could call step into. So we have got E, which is the sparkline point, and so you can use these kind of expression-wise breakpoints to break. I don't think Firefox has this feature. So you can get to this per iteration cycle. This should hopefully. There's the second one. There's the third one. Oh, and it even has the return value, which is nice. So you can occasionally do this, but it is quite a lot more difficult to debug these kinds of lines, I find. In addition, I think that the kind of march towards trying to make things one-liners can make them a little bit more inscrutable. To me, this line is a lot more difficult to read. Here, I think it's very clear on what the intent is up front. Like, we know we're doing a for loop. Here, the for loop is kind of buried in here. Like, it's all the way over here by this map that is really the indicator that this is a for loop. Anyways, this isn't about code style. This is about custom elements. It's just my little bugbear that people write maps a lot of maps. Okay, well, I mean, we're at the end of the stream and I'm still suffering, so and my webcam isn't working, and the stream was delayed because OBS was not having a fun time. So I think the stream has been one of the less successful ones. But hopefully everyone had fun. I think we've covered some new points. I might continue working on this tomorrow, but I may not. But I will work on it at some point. Let me know. Yes, thank you. I will get some rest after this. Let me know if you want to continue working on this for the next stream, or if you want us to work on something new. I think I have a special guest for tomorrow's stream. So I may work on something new rather than punish them by working on my new show of this. Anyways, thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.